TNL Sports Central, we're going over a questionable game preview and prediction on a big matchup coming up in the SEC in Week 12, and that's going to be between Tennessee and Auburn. Both these teams have had very different seasons so far, and on one side you got Tennessee, who's definitely been a disappointment. I think we all can admit that. I mean, Tennessee was expected to be a top team in the SEC East. I'd predict them to finish third in that division, in which right now it's definitely not looking like that's going to happen, but Tennessee definitely still has potential to have a good end to the season and possibly make a good bowl game, so there's definitely something to still play for if you're the Volunteers. Meanwhile, for Auburn, they're 4-2, gaining back some momentum as well as they beat LSU big time a couple of weeks ago. 48-11 was the final score there. They absolutely blew out LSU in that matchup, so all around Auburn's definitely been trying to gain back some momentum, which, I mean, if they're going to continue doing that, they got to beat Tennessee here, so it's going to be a very important matchup for both sides here going head-to-head in Week 12 of this season, and we're going to be going over a full game preview and prediction on this one here today, starting out with your team trends. Of course, last game, Tennessee lost to Arkansas. 13-24 was the final score there. That was back a couple of weeks ago. Of course, Tennessee did not play in Week 11, but they did lose that game to the Razorbacks there by 11, in which, of course, Arkansas has actually been a pretty good team this season, so I would not consider that to be all that terrible of a loss. I mean, I think Arkansas legit does have a chance to win against LSU this week, so Arkansas really is not that terrible of a team. But meanwhile, for Auburn, they beat LSU. 48-11 was the final score there. They absolutely blew out LSU. Tigers did not stand a chance from the start of that game all the way to the end. So all around, Auburn's definitely been getting back some momentum. I mean, they did start 2-2 to the season, but they're on a 2-game winning streak after starting off 2-2, and Auburn's back in the rankings and looking pretty good right now, so they're hoping to definitely climb right back up, which I definitely think is possible for Auburn. I mean, they've got a lot of potential moving forward. I think the Tigers are still a contender in the SEC personally. I think Auburn, even though they're a two-loss team, they still have got a lot of potential to work for moving forward. But for Tennessee, they're 2-4 right now with a 4-game losing streak. They started off the season 2-0, and they looked like one of the best teams in the country, in my opinion, at the start of the season, but ever since then, it's just been a free fall for the Volunteers. I mean, they've lost 4 in a row. They lost to Georgia, Kentucky, Alabama, and Arkansas through that stretch. So they did have to play Georgia and Alabama, who are two pretty good teams, but getting blown out to Kentucky and losing to Arkansas like that is a little bit unacceptable, especially if you're wanting to be a top team in the SEC. This game's to be on Saturday, November 21st, 7 p.m. Eastern in Auburn, so your Tigers will be the home team for this matchup. Spread currently says Auburn by 10.5. ESPN FBI's got Auburn by 86%, and then the Vegas prediction actually has a close game here with 31-27 being towards Auburn in your final score prediction right now. So Auburn is predicted to win in all three of our predictions here, but in the end, I still think Auburn definitely is going to have a close one against Tennessee. I think the Vols are definitely going to be a very motivated team in this matchup. They haven't played in a couple of weeks. They've gotten a couple of week break, and I definitely think Tennessee coming back from that is going to be healthy and ready to go against Auburn come Saturday. Here's your stat comparison for this matchup. Tennessee's got 20 points per game, 31 points allowed. They got 174 pass yards a game on average, then they got 143 rush yards. Then for yards allowed, they get 247 passing and then 160 rushing. For the Auburn side, they got 28 points per game, 22 points allowed, 234 average pass yards, 171 average rush yards. Then for yards allowed, they got 236 passing and then 155 rushing. So both teams are actually pretty similar as far as yardage goes and how the stats go, but Auburn, I would say, is better in the end. I mean, they've got more points per game than points allowed, which Tennessee actually has 11 less points allowed than points per game. So that is something that definitely have to correct on their side. But as far as yards per game, I mean, Auburn definitely has a lot more, averaging around 400 yards a game, meanwhile Tennessee on the other side is averaging right around, it looks like 310. So it's not as good for Tennessee on their side, but still both teams have got their talent on both sides. There's no doubt about that. I mean, for Tennessee, you got Jarrett Carantano, of course, their quarterback, which he's been a little bit of a disappointment this season. I mean, he had a decent 2019 season, but this year he's just seemed a little bit off. I mean, he's had 950 yards with a 6 touchdown to 3 interception ratio, but that's not terrible. I mean, it's not terrible stats, but at the same time, I mean, Jarrett Carantano is not a quarterback that I think will lead Tennessee to an SEC championship by any means. But for Auburn, they got Bo Nix, who has been playing not as good as last season, at least. I mean, he's got 1,400 yards so far this season with 9 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, which that's not terrible at all either. I mean, don't get me wrong. Most quarterbacks through 6 games have a tough time getting to even 1,400 yards. But for Bo Nix, I mean, he played a lot better last season, and he's definitely getting back some momentum now. I mean, I think at the beginning of the season, he had a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio for the first couple of games, which was definitely a concern at that time. But Bo Nix has been playing a lot better since then, and it looks like he's improving as the season goes on. So both teams definitely have had their struggles, but also have got their talents. I mean, if you look at the rushing core for both these teams, of course, you got Bigsby on Auburn's side, who's had 500 yards so far on the season, 5 touchdowns. He's been really good for this team. Don't forget about him. And then on the Tennessee side, you also have a great receiver in Palmer. He's put up over 300 yards so far receiving on the season. Same thing with Gray on the Tennessee side, 478 yards with 3 touchdowns is what he's had. So all around for Tennessee, they've still got a lot of talent here heading into the rest of the season. And I think Tennessee, being a team who's had a halfway decent recruiting class, it's kind of surprising to see them 2-4, but I mean, still, I think Tennessee's got potential to have a good end of the season, so don't sleep on them moving forward. But some key points for this one, of course, Tennessee needs a win. They have definitely had a rough past month for this team. I mean, if you look at how they've played once again, I mean, they've lost 4 straight. They have not won a game since October 3rd when they beat Missouri 35-12. So it's been over a month and a half since Tennessee has won a game. So they definitely need a win to get back on track, which, I mean, this could be the game that they do that. I mean, Auburn is definitely a team that is good, but Auburn is definitely susceptible to upsets because they did get upset by South Carolina back on October 17th. So Auburn has lost to bad teams in the past, but still for Tennessee, this is a big game for them, especially if they're wanting to make it to a bowl game. But for Auburn, yeah, they're getting back momentum for sure. I mean, Auburn's looking pretty good right now. They did not play over the past couple of weeks, but they did play LSU back on October 31st, which they absolutely blew out LSU in that matchup 48-11. So, yeah, they looked really good in that one. But offense is definitely starting to work well for Auburn. I mean, at the beginning of the season, Bo Nix in this offense just looked lethargic. I mean, they just did not play very well at all with each other. But I think that's been getting a lot better as the season went on. But do expect moderate scoring here. I do think we will see both offenses score quite a few points, which is what I'm expecting here, especially for an SEC matchup. This will be considered as a moderate scoring game. In the end, I've got Auburn getting the win here. I think Tennessee is a good team, no doubt. Tennessee's got a lot of talent, but I think Auburn is just playing much better right now, and Tennessee does not have squat as far as momentum goes. I mean, they're on a 4-game losing streak right now. They've lost 4 games in a row. They have not won since October 3rd. Tennessee just does not have anything going for them right now. And, I mean, Tennessee's got to flip it around at some point, but I definitely think it's not going to happen here against Auburn. I think Auburn right now is definitely on a mission to try to climb back up in the rankings, and I think they're going to be super motivated heading into this matchup. Auburn's going to get the win here, but it's going to be very close. I think Tennessee keeps it close throughout this entire matchup, but the probability here is going to be 65% towards Auburn. I think the Tigers, once again, are all around the better team right now. They got more momentum, and they've played much better over the past couple of weeks. Once again, I mean, if you look at how they played in the later parts of October, they beat LSU 48-11, also beat Ole Miss 35-28 on October 24th. So Auburn's been all around playing like the better team. But in the end, do let me know your thoughts and comments below on this matchup. Let me know your score predictions, all of that down below. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But then again, thanks again for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I will see you all later.